Mr. Davis blocked the door and said, "You're free to leave anytime, but think about the consequences." When I finally escaped, they sent a court summons claiming I owed them for 17 years of upbringing. I just stared at the envelope. That was a year ago. Last week, I changed my name legally back to Hannah Martinez. The Davises took me in when I was 5. They told me I was a foster placement, wealthy couple, no kids, perfect match for an abandoned kid like me. While other foster kids bounced between homes, I lived in luxury, private school, piano lessons, summers at Martha's Vineyard. They never adopted me though. Mrs. Davis always said the paperwork was too complicated, that our arrangement worked perfectly as it was. Everything changed in 7th grade when they pulled me out for homeschooling. Public school was beneath me, they insisted. After that, all my tutors came to the house, Dr. Morrison did medical exams in the guest room, Dr. Beth handled dental work in the converted study. Everything paid in cash, always. They called me Lucy, though something deep in my mind whispered that wasn't right. When I turned 18, they offered to fund my entire college education if I stayed with them. Mrs. Davis actually cried, calling me family. I accepted immediately. Where else would I go? By then, I had no friends left. The Davises had labeled them all bad influences before pulling me from school. They monitored my internet for predators, checked my phone for inappropriate content. Normal protective parent stuff, I told myself. Junior year, I needed to write an essay about overcoming adversity. I mentioned wanting to research my birth parents, just to understand why they gave me up. Mrs. Davis's coffee mug shattered against the marble floor. She hissed that those people were dead, overdosed when I was 4, and they'd protected me from that ugly truth. I started to point out that I was 5 when I arrived, but Mr. Davis cut me off. Trauma distorts memory, he explained. My case file was sealed to protect me from those monsters. When I asked to see any documentation, he stood up slowly and delivered his threat. They'd given me everything, and if I pursued this delusion, they'd reconsider my college funding. I was 20 now, not their responsibility anymore. I dropped it immediately, but memories kept surfacing. Yellow walls with dinosaur stickers, a woman singing while braiding my hair. Whenever I mentioned these images, Mrs. Davis would insist they were trauma-induced fantasies. Her hands shook every single time. Then my online tutoring friend mentioned taking an ancestry DNA test for fun. I started saving money from my Zoom tutoring sessions and had the kit sent to her address. We secretly met up, and 6 weeks later, an email changed everything. I had a half-sister match named Georgia, and her message made my legs give out. She called me Hannah and asked if it was really me. Said I looked exactly like the age progression photos, that mom and dad never stopped searching after I vanished from a campground at age 3. They'd been looking for 17 years. Hannah. The name hit me like lightning, bringing a flood of real memories. The singing woman was our mother. None of it was fantasy. I video called them from my friend's house. My birth parents sobbed on screen, calling me Mija, their baby, saying they always knew I was alive. They told me everything. We'd been camping at Yosemite. I was playing by the picnic table while they packed the car. When they turned around, I was gone. Rangers found my shoe by the river and assumed I'd been swept away. Case closed. I started telling them about the foster system placing me, but my mother's face went white. She asked what foster system, what was I talking about? I was never in foster care. Someone had taken me. 13 years of lies crumbled in seconds. The cash payments, homeschooling, family friend doctors, all of it made sense now. No adoption papers because there couldn't be any. No real social worker because I wasn't actually a foster child. Georgia suddenly asked what they called me. When I said Lucy, she gasped. That was my stuffed elephant's name, the toy I'd carried everywhere. I still had it. The Davises had said it came with me from my previous placement. That night I confronted them, told them I knew about Yosemite, knew what they'd done. Mrs. Davis went white while Mr. Davis stood up in that threatening way he had. He tried insisting I was confused, but I screamed that my name was Hannah and they'd stolen me. They looked at each other, having an entire conversation in that glance. Then Mrs. Davis calmly told me to pack my things. I packed frantically while they watched from the doorway. Mrs. Davis kept wringing her hands, and Mr. Davis blocked the exit with his body. My hands shook as I threw clothes into my old duffel bag, the same one they'd given me years ago for our trips to Martha's Vineyard. Mr. Davis stepped into my room and closed the door behind him. He moved to my dresser and leaned against it, arms crossed. Mrs. Davis sat on my bed, right on top of the clothes I needed to pack. She reached for my hand, but I jerked away. They exchanged another look. Mr. Davis cleared his throat and explained that I was making a terrible mistake. Those people claiming to be my parents were probably scammers who'd found my information online. DNA tests weren't always accurate. I needed to think about this rationally. I yanked more clothes from hangers while he talked. Mrs. Davis started crying, real tears this time. She said they'd given me everything, loved me like their own. How could I throw that away for strangers? She grabbed my wrist when I reached past her. Her grip was stronger than I expected. Mr. Davis moved closer, and suddenly the room felt very small. He reminded me that I had no money, no car, nowhere to go. My college funding would disappear the moment I walked out that door. Did I really want to end up homeless? I pulled free from Mrs. Davis and grabbed my laptop. Mr. Davis blocked my path to the door. He suggested we all calm down and discuss this in the morning. I could sleep on it, make a rational decision. Mrs. Davis agreed, saying I was too emotional to think clearly. Oh boy, the Davises really thought they had the perfect setup going, didn't they? Private school, Martha's Vineyard, and all you had to do was forget your real name and that little camping trip where you mysteriously vanished. Talk about red flags dressed up in fancy clothes. I love how Mrs. Davis drops her coffee mug the second Hannah mentions birth parents, like she's in a soap opera doing her big dramatic reveal. And then Mr. Davis jumps in with trauma distorts memory, like he's got a handbook called Things to Say When Your Kidnapping Victim Gets Suspicious. The way they coordinated, like they'd done this before, made my skin crawl. I demanded they move, but Mr. Davis just smiled. He said I was free to leave anytime, but I should consider the consequences. No more tuition, no more health insurance, no more home. Was I prepared for that? My phone buzzed with a text from Georgia. She'd sent their address, said they were ready whenever I could get there. It was only 2 states away. Mr. Davis saw me checking and held out his hand for my phone. For my own good, he said. I needed space from these people filling my head with lies. I clutched the phone tighter. Mrs. Davis stood up and tried reasoning with me. These strangers had abandoned me once already. What if they did it again? At least with the Davises, I knew I was safe and loved. She reached for my face, but I stepped back. That's when I noticed Mr. Davis had moved between me and the door completely. Mrs. Davis was herding me toward the corner. My heart pounded as I realized they weren't going to let me leave. Not tonight, maybe not ever. I pretended to calm down, said maybe they were right. I should think about it. Mrs. Davis smiled and relaxed slightly. Mr. Davis nodded approvingly but didn't move from the door. He suggested suggested I hand over my phone so I could sleep without distractions. Instead, I lunged for the window. Mr. Davis caught my arm and yanked me back, not roughly, but firmly enough to show he meant business. Mrs. Davis gasped and said I was being ridiculous. The window was painted shut anyway, had been for years. They guided me to sit on the bed. Mr. Davis kept his hand on my shoulder while Mrs. Davis stroked my hair. They took turns explaining how confused I was, how trauma could create false memories. The mind could be tricked so easily. Those people had probably coached me on what to remember. I let them talk while my mind raced. The window was indeed painted shut. Mr. Davis blocked the door. My phone was my only connection to my real family, and they wanted it. I needed a plan. Mrs. Davis offered to make me some tea to help me relax. I nodded, hoping one of them would leave, but Mr. Davis stayed put while she went to the kitchen. He sat in my desk chair, watching me like I might bolt, which I absolutely would have. When Mrs. Davis returned with the tea, I pretended to sip it. She'd added something. I could smell it. The same herbal smell from when I'd had trouble sleeping years ago. They were trying to substance me. I yawned dramatically and let my eyes droop. Mrs. Davis smiled and suggested I get ready for bed. We could talk more in the morning when I was thinking clearly. Mr. Davis finally moved from the door, but only to let Mrs. Davis out. He stationed himself in the hallway. I changed into pajamas and climbed into bed fully dressed underneath. The house grew quiet. I waited, phone hidden under my pillow, texting Georgia everything. She said to call 911, but I knew the Davises would spin it. Troubled foster kid having an episode. They had Dr. Beth and Dr. Morrison to back them up. Around midnight, I heard Mr. Davis's footsteps move away from my door. I crept to the window and used my desk lamp to chip at the paint. It took forever, my hands cramping, but finally the window cracked open. The alarm didn't go off. They'd disabled it, probably years ago to keep me from knowing it existed. I threw my bag out first, then squeezed through the opening. The drop was further than expected, and I hit the ground hard. Pain shot through my ankle, but I forced myself up. I had to move. The motion lights clicked on. I heard Mr. Davis shout from inside. I grabbed my bag and ran, limping toward the street. Behind me, the front door slammed open. Mr. Davis called my name, my fake name, ordering me to stop. I reached the sidewalk just as Mrs. Davis appeared in her car, blocking my path. She rolled down the window and begged me to get in. We needed to talk about this like a family. Mr. Davis approached from behind, boxing me in. That's when headlights appeared down the street. My Uber, ordered from my phone while I pretended to sleep. I dodged around Mrs. Davis's car and threw myself into the back seat. The driver looked alarmed, but I begged him to drive. Just drive. Mr. Davis pounded on the window. Mrs. Davis got out and pleaded with the driver, saying I was confused and needed help. The driver hesitated, looking between us. I showed him my phone with Georgia's messages, my real family waiting for me. Told him these people had kidnapped me as a child. He hit the gas. In the mirror, I saw the Davises standing in the street. Mrs. Davis was crying again. Mr. Davis had his phone out, probably calling Dr. Morrison or Dr. Beth, their network of family friends who'd helped hide me all these years. The Uber driver kept glancing at me nervously. I asked him to take me to the bus station instead of the address I'd entered, harder for them to track. He agreed, even offered to wait while I bought my ticket to make sure I got on safely. At the station, I bought a ticket with cash from my tutoring savings. 2 states away felt like another planet. I found a corner seat and tried to stay awake, terrified I'd see Mr. Davis walk through those doors. My ankle throbbed and my hands were cut from the window, but I was free. The bus pulled out just as a familiar car screeched into the parking lot. Mrs. Davis jumped out, scanning frantically. Our eyes met through the bus window. She pressed her hand to the glass, mouthing something. I'm sorry, maybe, or come back. I couldn't tell. I turned away and texted Georgia that I was coming home, my real home. The word felt foreign but right. For 17 years, the Davises had played the perfect parents. Now I understood why they'd isolated me so carefully. No real friends, no outside doctors, no paper trail, just their word against mine. My phone rang constantly. The Davises, then unknown numbers that were probably their friends. I let them all go to voicemail. Ha, nothing says loving family like trying to confiscate your phone and block the door while offering you sleepy time tea. The Davises really went from zero to creepy movie villains real quick here, with Mr. Davis doing his best bouncer impression and Mrs. Davis playing the let's drug the kid card like it's totally normal parent behavior. I love how she casually mentions the window's been painted shut for years, like that's not the most suspicious thing ever. What kind of parents seal their kids' window shut and then they're shocked when she makes a break for it? Around dawn, I finally listened to one from Mrs. Davis. She wasn't crying anymore. Her voice was cold, controlled. She reminded me that I had nothing without them. No money, no documents, no proof of who I claimed to be. My real parents were strangers. I'd regret this choice. The threat was clear. They weren't giving up. 17 years of careful planning wouldn't end with me running away. They'd invested too much to let me go. I deleted the message and blocked their numbers, but I knew it wasn't over. People who could steal a child and hide her for 17 years wouldn't just accept defeat. But for now, I was on a bus heading toward answers, toward the yellow walls with dinosaur stickers, toward the woman who sang while braiding hair, toward my real name and my real life. Whatever came next, at least I'd face it as Hannah, not Lucy, not their perfectly crafted lie. The sun rose over unfamiliar landscapes. Every mile took me further from the Davises and closer to the truth. My ankle still hurt and exhaustion pulled at me, but I stayed awake. I'd been asleep for 17 years. It was time to finally wake up. The bus lurched to a stop at a rest area, jolting me from my thoughts. I gripped my phone tighter, watching other passengers file out for the bathroom break. My ankle screamed when I stood, but I forced myself to walk normally. No signs of weakness. In the grimy bathroom stall, I checked my phone again. 12 missed calls from the Davises, 3 voicemails from unknown numbers. Georgia had sent directions from the bus station to their house, along with photos of my birth parents holding welcome signs. My chest tightened seeing their faces, older versions of the fragments in my memory. Back on the bus, I noticed a woman across the aisle kept glancing at me. Middle-aged, brown hair, nervous energy. She looked familiar, but I couldn't place her. When our eyes met, she quickly turned away. My skin prickled with unease. The bus rolled through small towns and endless highways. I dozed fitfully, jerking awake each time we stopped. The woman was still there, still watching. At the next rest stop, she followed me off the bus. I ducked into the convenience store, pretending to browse while watching her reflection in the glass doors. She hovered near the entrance, checking her phone repeatedly. I grabbed a bottle of water and some bandages for my hands. The cashier barely looked up from her magazine. Outside, the woman had moved closer to the bus, positioning herself between me and the door. I circled around the other side, slipping back on while she searched the parking lot. My phone vibrated. Unknown number. Against Against my better judgment, I answered. Dr. Morrison's voice filled my ear, calm and professional. He expressed concern about my mental state, suggested I was having a breakdown. The Davises were worried sick. He could meet me at the next stop, help me sort through these delusions. I hung up and turned off location services. They were tracking me somehow. The woman across the aisle had her phone out now, texting furiously. Our eyes met again, and this time she didn't look away. She mouthed something that looked like my name. Lucy or Hannah, I couldn't tell. At the next major stop, I stayed in my seat while others got off. The woman hesitated, then followed them. Through the window, I watched her make a phone call, gesturing frantically. This was my chance. I grabbed my bag and slipped off the bus, heading for the terminal's back exit. The afternoon sun hit me like a slap. I had no idea where I was, some mid-sized city between here and there. My ankle throbbed with each step, but I kept moving, ducking into an alley behind the station. I needed a new plan. A pawn shop sign caught my eye. Inside, I sold the gold bracelet Mrs. Davis had given me for my 18th birthday. The owner offered less than it was worth, but I didn't argue. Cash in hand, I found a cheap motel that didn't ask questions. The room smelled like cigarettes and disappointment. I collapsed on the bed, finally safe to examine my injuries. My ankle had swollen to twice its size, purple bruises blooming across the skin. The cuts on my hands were deeper than I'd thought. I cleaned them with the motel's scratchy towels, fighting back tears. Georgia called while I was wrapping my ankle. She sounded frantic. The Davises had called my birth parents, claiming I was mentally unstable and dangerous. They'd offered to help locate me, for my own safety. My birth mother had hung up on them, but Georgia worried they might show up at the house. I told her about the woman on the bus, Dr. Morrison's call. Georgia's voice hardened. She promised they'd be ready if anyone showed up. Her husband was a mechanic, had friends who could help. I wanted to tell her not to do anything stupid, but the words stuck in my throat. After 17 years of isolation, having people willing to fight for me felt surreal. That night, I barely slept. Every car door slam made me jump. Every footstep in the hallway sent my heart racing. I barricaded the door with a dresser and kept my phone charging beside me. The Davises had stopped calling, but somehow that felt worse. Morning brought new problems. My ankle had turned an alarming shade of purple, and walking was agony. I needed medical attention, but hospitals meant paperwork. Questions I couldn't answer. Instead, I wrapped it tighter and swallowed the last of my ibuprofen. At a thrift store, I bought different clothes and a baseball cap. The girl in the mirror looked nothing like Lucy Davis, private school princess. She looked scared and young and very alone. I tucked my hair under the cap and practiced walking without limping. The next bus wasn't until evening. I spent the day moving between coffee shops and libraries, never staying anywhere too long. At an internet cafe, I researched the Davises. Their social media showed a perfect life, charity galas, and vacation photos. Mrs. Ha, nothing like a good old-fashioned bus chase to really spice up your escape plan. And that woman across the aisle wins the award for world's worst spy with all that obvious staring and frantic texting. I mean, if you're gonna tail someone, maybe don't make it look like you're watching a tennis match every time they move. Davis's posts about her beloved daughter made me sick. Comments from friends praised their dedication to fostering. None of them knew the truth. I found an old article about a missing child from Yosemite, Hannah Martinez, age 3. The photo showed a grinning toddler with dark curls, clutching a stuffed elephant. The search had lasted 2 weeks before authorities declared her likely drowned. Case closed, family devastated. My hands shook as I printed the article. Back at the motel, I studied my reflection again. The bone structure was the same, the eyes identical to the toddler in the photo. How had no one noticed? But then, who would connect a wealthy couple's foster daughter to a presumably dead Mexican-American child from 2 states away? My phone buzzed. Georgia again. She'd done some digging of her own. The Davises had moved to their current city just months after I disappeared. Mr. Davis had taken a lower-paying job, surprising colleagues who knew his ambition. They'd told people they were trying for a baby, dealing with infertility. Then I appeared, their miracle foster placement. The pieces clicked together with sickening clarity. They'd been at Yosemite too, maybe camping nearby, maybe driving through. They'd seen an opportunity and taken it. A little girl who looked enough like them to pass, young enough to forget her real life. They'd crafted a perfect story and stuck to it for 17 years. Evening came too slowly. I made my way back to the bus station, scanning for familiar faces. The woman from before was gone, but that didn't mean I was safe. I bought my ticket with cash and chose a seat near the driver. This bus was older, shabbier. It wheezed and groaned through the night but kept moving. I stayed awake, watching headlights sweep past, counting down the miles. Somewhere behind me, the Davises were planning their next move. They wouldn't give up easily. My phone died around 3 a.m. I'd forgotten to bring the charger from the motel. Now I was truly alone. No way to contact Georgia or check for threats. The man beside me snored loudly, oblivious to my panic. I focused on breathing, on the steady rumble of the engine. Dawn broke over unfamiliar mountains. The landscape had changed, desert giving way to forests. We were getting closer. My ankle had gone numb, which worried me more than the pain. I tested it carefully when we stopped for gas. Still functional, barely. The final stretch felt endless. Every stop could bring danger. Every new passenger made me tense. But slowly, miraculously, the miles disappeared. Signs appeared for my birth parents' city, my real home, or what should have been. The bus station was smaller than I'd expected. I limped off, searching for Georgia. Instead, I saw a middle-aged couple standing by the entrance. The woman had my eyes, my bone structure. The man beside her looked like he hadn't slept in days. They held a sign that read, "Welcome home, Hannah." I froze. 17 years of lies and manipulation had taught me to trust no one. What if this was another trick? What if the Davises had somehow gotten here first? But then the woman smiled, and it was the same smile from my fractured memories. The one that came with lullabies and braided hair. I took one step, then another. My ankle gave out and I stumbled. They rushed forward, catching me before I hit the ground. My mother's arms went around me, and she smelled like vanilla and home. My father's hand cupped my face, tears streaming down his cheeks. They helped me to their car, an old sedan with a Virgin Mary hanging from the mirror. Georgia waited in the back seat, her face a mix of joy and worry. She took one look at my ankle and insisted on the hospital. I tried to protest, but my mother had already started driving. At the emergency room, they gave our real names. Hannah Martinez, 20 years old, home at last. The nurse looked confused at the date of birth, clearly not matching my medical history. But she said nothing, just treated my sprained ankle and bandaged my hands. While we waited for x-rays, my birth parents told me their side. The endless searches, the false leads, the grief that never faded. They'd had Georgia 5 years later, but never stopped looking for me. Every age progression photo, every missing missing child report, they checked them all. They'd never given up hope. Georgia showed me my old room. They'd kept it exactly as it was, just updated for each age I should have been. Toys gave way to books, then posters of bands they thought I might like. A whole life imagined and waiting. The yellow walls were covered with photos from before, a happy toddler who had no idea what was coming. That night, I slept in my real bed for the first time in 17 years. But peace didn't come easy. Every creak of the house made me jump. I kept checking the locks, the windows. The Davises were still out there, still claiming I was theirs. My birth mother found me in the kitchen at 3 a.m., staring out the window. She made hot chocolate and sat beside me, not pushing for conversation. Finally, I told her about the woman on the bus, Dr. Morrison's call, the network of people who'd helped hide me. Her face darkened with each detail. She revealed they'd hired a private investigator years ago. He'd found strange patterns, wealthy couples suddenly acquiring young children with murky backgrounds, but without proof, without bodies. There was nothing to pursue. The Davises had been careful, their story airtight. Morning brought new challenges. I had no legal identity as Hannah Martinez, no social security number, no birth certificate that matched my life. The documents the Davises had were all forged, but they were all I had. Reclaiming my real identity would take time I might not have. Georgia's husband, Marcus, arrived with breakfast and a plan. He knew people who could help, friends who understood complicated situations. Not criminals, he assured, just people who'd learned to work around broken systems. Oh wow, nothing says awkward family reunion, like wondering if the people holding the welcome home sign are actually your parents, or just really committed identity thieves. After 17 years of fake family drama, I'd be suspicious of a greeting card at this point. And of course, Georgia's waiting in the car like, surprise, I brought back up, because apparently everyone in this family is better at planning rescues than the Davises were at keeping their story straight. I wanted to trust him, but 17 years of isolation had left its mark. My phone, finally charged, exploded with messages. The Davises had escalated. They'd called my college, claiming I'd been kidnapped by strangers pretending to be my birth family. They'd frozen my bank accounts, canceled my credit cards. Every tie to my old life was being severed or weaponized. Worse, they'd hired someone to find me. Georgia recognized the name, a private investigator known for reuniting families. Ironic, considering. He was good at his job, she warned. We needed to be careful. My birth father wanted to confront them directly. He'd driven past their house once, years ago, following a false lead about a girl who looked like me. He'd been so close and never knew it. The rage in his eyes scared me. I begged him not to do anything rash, but the Davises made the first move. A lawyer's letter arrived, hand-delivered to my birth parents' door. It claimed I was mentally unstable, suffering from false memory syndrome. They were seeking conservatorship for my own protection. Attached were statements from Dr. Morrison and Dr. Beth about my fragile mental state. The audacity took my breath away. 17 years of crimes, and they were playing the victims. My birth mother crumpled the letter, her hands shaking with fury. Georgia called her friend, a paralegal who might know what to do. But legal battles meant exposure, questions we weren't ready to answer. That afternoon, a car drove slowly past the house. Mrs. Davis was in the passenger seat, scanning the windows. I ducked below the sill, heart hammering. She looked older than I remembered, desperation etched in every line of her face. Mr. Davis was driving, his jaw set in determination. They parked down the street and waited, testing us maybe, or gathering information. Marcus wanted to confront them, but I knew that's what they wanted. Any aggression from us would support their claims about dangerous strangers. Instead, we documented everything. Georgia took photos from the upstairs window. My birth mother called neighbors, warning them about strangers in the area. We were building our own case, quietly, carefully. That night, unable to sleep again, I found myself looking through photo albums, my real childhood, the ones stolen from me. Birthday parties I'd never attended, family gatherings I'd missed, cousins who'd grown up without me. A whole life erased because two people decided they deserved a child. The photos triggered more memories, not just the happy ones the Davises had tried to suppress, but the in-between moments. My mother teaching me to tie my shoes, my father carrying me on his shoulders, the feeling of belonging somewhere, of being truly loved without conditions. I thought about confronting the Davises one final time, not for closure, they didn't deserve that, but to look them in the eyes and tell them they'd failed. Despite 17 years of lies, manipulation, and control, I'd found my way home. They'd stolen my childhood, but not my future. Georgia found me crying over the albums. She sat beside me, her own tears falling. She told me about growing up in my shadow, how their parents had been protective to the point of paranoia, how she'd researched every Jane Doe case, every unidentified child, hoping and dreading in equal measure. My birth parents had suffered too, in ways I was only beginning to understand. Their marriage had nearly ended under the weight of grief. They'd blamed themselves, each other, God, but they'd survived, had another child, rebuilt their lives around the hole I'd left, and they'd never stopped searching. The next morning brought a new development. The private investigator had found us. He left a business card in the mailbox, nothing more. A warning or an invitation, we couldn't tell. Marcus wanted to stake out his office, see what he was planning, but that felt too much like something from the movies we were trying to avoid. Instead, I made a decision. I called the investigator myself. He answered on the second ring, his voice professionally neutral. I told him I was safe, with my real family. Whatever the Davises were paying him, it was built on lies. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he asked one question. Could I prove who I was? The DNA test, the memories, the stuffed elephant named Lucy. It wasn't legal proof, but it was enough for doubt. He said he'd tell the Davises he couldn't find me. A small mercy from a stranger, but the Davises weren't done. Dr. Morrison showed up at the house, claiming to be worried about my welfare. My birth father met him at the door, blocking his entry. The conversation was tense but civil. Dr. Morrison insisted I needed help, that my delusions were dangerous. My father told him to leave and never come back. As he left, Dr. Morrison dropped his mask for just a moment. The concern disappeared, replaced by cold calculation. He'd been part of this from the beginning, I realized. Not just a family friend, but an active participant in keeping me trapped. How many others were involved? That night, we held a family meeting. My birth parents, Georgia, Marcus, and me. We needed a plan that didn't involve courts or police, but would end this once and for all. The Davises had to accept that I was gone, that their 17-year charade was over. Marcus suggested documentation. If we could prove the kidnapping without official channels, maybe the threat would be enough. My birth parents had kept everything from the search. Police reports, witness statements, photos from that day at Yosemite. Combined with my memories and the DNA test, it painted a clear picture. But we needed more. Georgia remembered something about the Davises' move, how sudden it had been. If we could find someone who knew them before, who remembered remembered when they didn't have a child, it might help. It was a long shot, but worth trying. I spent hours online, searching for traces of their past. Oh man, the Davises really went full villain mode with the conservatorship papers, like they're trying to win some kind of world's most delusional kidnappers award or something, and Dr. Morrison just casually dropping by like, hey, just checking on your totally real delusions that I definitely didn't help create for 17 years. The private investigator switching sides after one phone call is pretty great though. Guess even he could smell the crazy from a mile away. Facebook was a dead end, their profiles carefully curated, but I found an old forum for their previous neighborhood. A woman mentioned the nice couple down the street, how sad they'd been about their fertility struggles. Then suddenly they'd moved. No forwarding address. I reached out carefully, pretending to be researching old neighbors for a school project. The woman remembered more than I'd hoped. The Davises had been obsessed with children, volunteering at every youth event. Then they'd vanished right after a camping trip. She'd always wondered what happened to them. The timeline matched perfectly. They'd taken me and run, starting fresh where no one knew them, where a sudden child wouldn't raise questions, where they could craft their perfect family narrative without interference. Armed with this information, we prepared for the final confrontation, not in court or through lawyers, but face to face. The Davises needed to understand that their fiction was over, that I knew the truth and so did others, that continuing to fight would only expose them further. But first, I needed to reclaim my identity in my own way. Georgia helped me set up new social media under my real name. We posted photos of my homecoming, carefully edited to protect our location. Friends from my online tutoring reached out, shocked but supportive. My life as Lucy was ending. My life as Hannah beginning. The Davises saw the posts, of course. Mrs. Davis called from a blocked number, begging me to reconsider. She cried about the nursery they'd decorated, the dreams they'd had. How could I abandon them after everything they'd done? The manipulation was so familiar it almost felt comfortable, but I was done being controlled. I told her the truth, that I remembered my real parents, my real life, that what they'd done was unforgivable, that they needed to let me go before things got worse for everyone. She hung up on me, but I'd said what I needed to. Mr. Davis tried a different approach. He sent emails detailing everything they'd spent on me over the years. Private school tuition, medical care, vacations, as if buying stolen goods made them yours, as if love could be purchased and documented in spreadsheets. I didn't respond to the emails, but I kept them. Evidence of their mindset, their belief that money equaled ownership, that raising a stolen child somehow made her yours, that 17 years of lies could be justified by material comfort. My ankle healed slowly but steadily. Physical therapy helped, paid for by my birth parents who insisted it was nothing compared to what they'd wished they could give me. I started learning Spanish again, the language stolen from me along with everything else. My mother cried when I called her mama for the first time. The Davises made one last desperate play. They showed up at the house with a police officer, claiming I'd stolen valuable jewelry. The bracelet I'd pawned, they said, was a family heirloom worth thousands. They wanted me arrested or at least questioned, but I'd kept the pawn shop receipt. And Georgia had recorded Mrs. Davis saying it was a gift. The officer looked annoyed at being dragged into family drama. He suggested they handle it in civil court if they really wanted to pursue it. The Davises left empty-handed, their last leverage gone. That night, I sat with my real family and felt something I'd never experienced with the Davises. Peace. Not the controlled calm of their perfect house, but real peace. The knowledge that I was where I belonged, with people who loved me without conditions or expectations. The Davises had stolen 17 years, but they couldn't steal this. The feeling of my mother braiding my hair while humming the same songs from my memories, my father teaching me to fix cars in the garage, patient with my fumbling hands, Georgia dragging me to terrible movies and good restaurants, making up for lost time. They'd tried to erase Hannah and create Lucy, but Hannah had survived, hidden in fragments of memory and DNA. Now she was free to reclaim her life, her identity, her family. The Davises could keep their big house and their perfect lies. I had something better. I had the truth. My birth parents wanted to pursue justice through proper channels eventually, but for now, we focused on healing, on rebuilding what had been stolen, on creating new memories to balance the lost ones. The Davises faded into the background, their power over me finally broken. I enrolled in community college under my real name. It meant starting over, losing credits, explaining gaps in records, but it also meant freedom. No more looking over my shoulder, no more wondering if my life was real, no more being someone else's creation. The last time I saw the Davises was by accident. I was at the grocery store with my mother, learning her shopping habits, her favorite brands. They were in the cereal aisle, looking older and smaller than I remembered. Mrs. Davis saw me first, her face crumpling. Mr. Davis grabbed her arm, steering her away. I felt nothing, not anger or pity or even satisfaction. They were strangers who'd stolen something precious but failed to break it, who'd played at being parents without understanding what that meant, who'd chosen crime over acceptance, control over love. My mother noticed them too. Her hand found mine, squeezing gently. We finished our shopping without drama, without confrontation. The Davises left their full cart behind, fleeing like the criminals they were. We bought ingredients for tamales, my grandmother's recipe that my mother would teach me. That's what victory looked like. Not courtroom drama or public vindication. Just a mother and daughter buying groceries, reclaiming traditions, building a future from the ashes of lies. The Davises had lost more than a daughter they'd never really had. They'd lost the illusion that love could be stolen and controlled. I was Hannah Martinez. I'd always been Hannah Martinez. Oh man, the Davises really went from loving parents to cartoon villains real quick with that fake police report about stolen jewelry. Like seriously, you're gonna claim the bracelet you gave her was suddenly a priceless family heirloom? That grocery store encounter though? Them abandoning a full cart and running away like they spotted the FBI? Meanwhile, Hannah's just there picking out ingredients for tamales with her real mom, living her best life while they're probably still in the parking lot arguing about whose fault it. And after 17 years of being someone else's fiction, I was finally free to write my own story. The Davises were just a chapter, a dark one, but not the ending. The real story was just beginning, and this time, I held the pen. The next morning brought an unexpected visitor. I was helping my mother prepare breakfast when a car pulled into the driveway. Through the kitchen window, I saw Mrs. Davis step out alone. She looked haggard, her usually perfect hair unwashed, her designer clothes wrinkled. My mother's hand found my shoulder, steadying me. Mrs. Davis approached the front door slowly, clutching a manila envelope. My birth father moved to intercept her on the porch while Georgia positioned herself by the window with her phone ready. Marcus stood near the back door just in case. They'd become my silent guardians without me asking. asking. I watched through the glass as Mrs. Davis handed my father the envelope. Her shoulders shook with what looked like sobs. He took it without opening it, his stance rigid. Whatever conversation they had was brief. She turned and walked back to her car, pausing once to look at the house. Our eyes met through the window. The woman who'd raised me for 17 years looked broken. After she drove away, we gathered in the living room. My father opened the envelope carefully. Inside were documents, dozens of them. My forged birth certificate listing the Davises as parents. Medical records from Dr. Morrison and Dr. Beth, all fabricated. School enrollment forms with lies upon lies. And at the bottom, a single sheet of notebook paper covered in Mrs. Davis's handwriting. My mother read it aloud. It wasn't an apology, not exactly. More like an explanation. How they'd been camping at Yosemite that weekend, unable to conceive after years of trying. How they'd seen me playing alone by the picnic table. How Mr. Davis had suggested they could give me a better life. How it had seemed like fate, like I was meant to be theirs. The letter detailed their careful planning, the immediate move, the story about foster care, the network of friends who helped maintain the lie. She wrote about loving me, about the nursery they'd decorated before taking me, about how she'd convinced herself I was better off. But now, seeing my real family, she understood what they'd stolen, not just from me, but from them. Georgia grabbed the papers and started photographing everything. Evidence, she muttered. My birth mother sat beside me, her arm around my shoulders. None of us spoke about forgiveness. Some things couldn't be forgiven. That afternoon, Mr. Davis made his own appearance, but he didn't come to the house. Instead, he showed up at the community college where I'd enrolled. I was leaving the registrar's office when I saw him standing by my car. My blood ran cold. He looked older than I remembered, stress etched into every line of his face. When he saw me, he straightened his tie, that old gesture of control. I stopped several feet away, my hand on my phone. Other students walked past, oblivious to the tension. Mr. Davis pulled out a checkbook. He wrote something, tore it out, and held it up. Even from a distance, I could see the amount. Enough to cover college, living expenses, everything. All I had to do was come home, be Lucy again, pretend the last weeks hadn't happened. He actually believed money could fix this. I shook my head. He stepped closer, and I stepped back. A security guard noticed our strange dance and started walking over. Mr. Davis saw him too. He set the check on my car's hood, weighted it down with a rock, and walked away without another gesture. I left it there, letting the wind take it. That evening, we had dinner with extended family. Aunts, uncles, cousins I'd never met. They'd all searched for me, prayed for me, mourned me. Now they welcomed me with careful warmth, understanding I was a stranger wearing their lost girl's face. My young cousin asked why I talked funny, because I'd been gone a long time, my mother explained. But I was home now. The Davises tried one more tactic. They sent Dr. Morrison again, this time with a court summons. Not for custody or conservatorship, but for fraud. They claimed I'd stolen money from them over the years, that I owed them for my upbringing. The audacity was breathtaking. Marcus knew a lawyer who looked at the summons and laughed. It would never hold up, he assured us. No court would entertain a kidnapper's claim for reimbursement. But it showed their desperation, their refusal to accept defeat. The lawyer offered to file a restraining order. I declined. I wanted this to end on my terms. I spent the next days rebuilding my life in small ways, opening a bank account as Hannah Martinez, getting a library card with my real name, learning my grandmother's recipes from my mother. Each normal act felt like a small victory, a reclaiming of what should have always been mine. Georgia took me to get my driver's license updated. The DMV clerk looked confused at the paperwork but processed it anyway. When she handed me the temporary license with my real name, I nearly cried. Such a simple thing, but it meant everything. The Davises' house went up for sale. A neighbor posted about it in the community Facebook group, expressing surprise at the sudden move. Georgia screenshotted everything. Within a week, they were gone. No forwarding address, just like when they'd taken me. Running again, but this time without their stolen child. I found out later that Dr. Morrison lost his medical license. Someone had reported irregularities in his practice, cash-only patients with no proper records. Dr. Beth closed her practice suddenly, claiming early retirement. The network that had helped hide me was crumbling, exposed by their own desperation. My birth parents never asked for details about those 17 years. They saw the scars, physical and otherwise. Mrs. Davis showing up with a manila envelope full of evidence against herself is like bringing your own rope to the trial. Here, let me help you with that conviction. And Mr. Davis actually thought he could fix kidnapping with a check. Like this is some kind of parking ticket situation where you just pay the fine and move on. The nerve of these people sending a bill for raising the kid they stole is like a burglar asking you to pay for the gas they used driving to your house. They noticed how I flinched at certain sounds, how I checked locks obsessively, how I sometimes forgot and responded to Lucy. They gave me space to heal while making sure I knew I was loved. I started therapy with someone my mother found, someone who understood complex trauma. The sessions were hard, unpacking 17 years of manipulation and lies. But slowly, I began to separate who I really was from who the Davises had tried to make me. One day, while organizing my few belongings, I found the stuffed elephant, Lucy, the toy that had revealed the truth. I sat on my bed, holding it, remembering the little girl who'd carried it everywhere. She'd survived, hidden inside me all these years. I gave the elephant to my youngest cousin. It deserved a child who could love it freely. My online tutoring friends reached out, offering support and jobs. I started teaching again, this time as Hannah. My students didn't care about my name change. They just wanted help with algebra and essays. The normalcy was healing. Georgia and I grew closer, making up for 17 lost years of sisterhood. She told me about the false leads they'd followed, the hope and heartbreak, how she'd grown up knowing she had a sister out there somewhere. We created new memories to overlay the missed ones. The pawn shop owner called about the bracelet. The Davises had tried to reclaim it, showing up with lawyers, but the sale was legal, the paperwork clear. He wanted to know if I wanted to buy it back. I declined. Let them have their symbol of false ownership. I had something real now. Months passed. The summons expired without action. The Davises never followed through, perhaps finally understanding they had no power left. Or maybe they'd found another town, another life built on lies. I tried not to think about it. I celebrated my first birthday as Hannah with a small party. My family sang in Spanish and English, cultures blending in the way they should have all along. My mother made my favorite foods from childhood, dishes I'd remembered in fragments. My father gave me a photo album, pictures of the life I'd missed but could now be part of. Community college was different from the private university the Davises had paid for. Harder in some ways, easier in others. I made friends who knew me only as Hannah, who had no connection to my past. They invited me to study groups and parties, normal college experiences I'd been denied. The yellow walls of my childhood room became my sanctuary. I added my own touch crushes, posters of bands I actually liked, books I chose myself. Sometimes I'd catch my mother standing in the doorway, just watching me exist in the space they'd preserved. One evening, while doing homework at the kitchen table, I heard my parents talking quietly. They were discussing selling the house, downsizing now that both daughters were grown, but they worried about taking away my recovered childhood room. I told them I didn't need the room anymore. I had them. Marcus helped me get a reliable used car, teaching me basic maintenance. Independence felt strange after 17 years of control. I drove aimlessly sometimes, windows down, music loud, just because I could. No one tracking me, no one demanding explanations. The Davises became a strange footnote in our family story. Relatives who hadn't known the full truth were horrified when they learned. Some wanted to pursue justice, to make them pay, but my parents respected my choice to let it go. Justice wasn't always about punishment. Sometimes it was about freedom. I kept one photo from my time as Lucy, hidden in my wallet, not for nostalgia, but as a reminder. The girl in the picture looked happy but hollow, performing a role she didn't know was fake. I needed to remember her, to honor the child who'd survived by forgetting. Georgia got engaged that spring. She asked me to be her maid of honor, joking that she'd waited 17 years to have her sister stand beside her. We went dress shopping with our mother. 3 generations of Martinez women laughing over tulle and lace. Normal family moments that felt like miracles. The nightmares faded slowly. I stopped checking for the Davises' car, stopped jumping when someone called me Lucy by mistake. My therapist said healing wasn't linear, that some days would be harder than others. She was right, but the good days started outnumbering the bad. I changed my major to social work. Maybe someday I could help other lost children find their way home. My advisor warned it would be triggering, given my history, but I'd survived 17 years of lies. I could survive the truth. My birth father taught me to drive stick shift in his old truck. We spent hours in empty parking lots, grinding gears and laughing. He told me about teaching Georgia the same way, how he'd imagined doing this with both his daughters. Now he could. The extended family welcomed me fully, no longer treating me like a fragile stranger. I learned inside jokes, family traditions, the complex dynamics of belonging. My aunts taught me to cook traditional dishes. My uncles included me in their good-natured arguments about soccer teams. I ran into one of the Davises' friends at a coffee shop. She recognized me, started to approach, then saw my mother beside me. The recognition dawned slowly, followed by horror. She left without ordering, another piece of their world crumbling. Spring turned to summer. I got a job at a local bookstore, surrounded by stories that weren't mine, but felt safer than reality sometimes. My coworkers knew me only as Hannah, the girl who was good with recommendations and inventory. Anonymous normalcy was its own kind of freedom. Georgia's wedding planning consumed our weekends. Cake tastings, venue visits, endless discussions about flowers. She included me in everything, making up for the sisterhood we'd missed. Our mother cried at every appointment, overwhelmed by having both daughters there. I dated tentatively, nothing serious. Oh, Hannah doing homework at the kitchen table while her parents worry about selling the house because of her room is such a sweet full circle moment. Like when you realize your parents kept your kindergarten art on the fridge for 20 years and you're like, guys, you can take that down now. And her driving around with the windows down just because she can sounds like every teenager's dream, except she's doing it as an adult who finally got her learner's permit, which is honestly kind of adorable in a better late than never way. Trust came hard after 17 years of deception. But there was a guy in my psychology class who made me laugh, who didn't push when I said my past was complicated. We studied together, grabbed coffee, took things slow. The Davises' old house sold to a young family with twins. Georgia drove past one day and saw toys in the yard, children playing where I'd been held captive, life moving on, erasing their presence. It felt like justice in its own way. My Spanish improved with daily practice. My parents spoke it at home now, no longer protecting me from my own heritage. I dreamed in 2 languages, my brain finally accepting both parts of my identity, Hannah and Lucy merging into someone new. I found my birth certificate, the real one, in my parents' safe. Such a simple document, but it grounded me. Hannah Elena Martinez, born at 3:47 a.m., 7 pounds exactly. The facts of my existence that no one could steal or alter. Summer ended with a family reunion at the beach. Dozens of relatives I was still learning to know. We played volleyball, shared stories, passed babies between generations. I helped my grandmother with the food, her weathered hands guiding mine through traditional preparations. That night, sitting around a bonfire, my uncle told the story of my disappearance, how the family had searched, prayed, never given up hope, how my return was a miracle they'd stopped believing in. The circle of faces glowed in the firelight. My family, my blood, my truth. I started my second year of college with confidence. My transcript might be complicated, my history complex, but I was moving forward. Each class, each assignment, each normal day was a choice to live as myself. The bookstore promoted me to assistant manager. My boss said I had a gift for creating safe spaces, for making customers feel welcome. I didn't tell her it came from 17 years of reading danger in every gesture, every tone. Some skills born from trauma could be repurposed for good. Georgia married in October, autumn leaves matching her russet bouquet. I stood beside her, steady and present. During the father-daughter dance, I saw my father's eyes find me, imagining another wedding someday. No rush, his expression said. We had time now. The Davises never contacted me again. Sometimes I wondered where they'd gone, if they'd found another child to steal. But mostly I didn't think of them at all. They'd taken 17 years but couldn't take the rest. My life stretched ahead, complicated but mine. I legally changed my name that winter, the final paperwork making it official. Hannah Elena Martinez on every document, every record. The judge who signed the order didn't know the weight of it, how it closed a chapter written in someone else's hand. My therapist suggested I write my story, not for publication, but for processing. I filled notebook after notebook, purging 17 years of lies onto paper. Then I burned them in my parents' backyard, my family standing witness. The smoke carried away Lucy Davis forever. That Christmas was my first real one with my family. Traditions I'd missed, foods I'd never tasted, prayers in Spanish I was learning to understand. My stocking hung between Georgia's and our youngest cousins, like it had always belonged there. I woke early Christmas morning and found my mother in the kitchen, preparing coffee. We stood together watching the sunrise, no words needed. She'd gotten up early every Christmas for 17 years, hoping. Now hope had been replaced by presents. The new year brought new challenges and victories. I passed my driving test in the stick shift truck, got accepted into the social work program, helped my cousin with her quinceañera planning, normal milestones that felt extraordinary because I was living them as myself. One day, cleaning out my closet, I found the duffel bag from my escape, the same one the Davises Davises had given me for trips to Martha's Vineyard. I donated it to Goodwill, another piece of the past released. Someone else could use it for real adventures. My relationship with the psychology class guy deepened slowly. He met my family, understood the weight of their protectiveness. When I finally told him the basic truth, he held my hand and said nothing could change who I was now. We took it day by day, building something real on honest ground. I graduated community college with honors, my family filling an entire row at the ceremony, my birth certificate name on the diploma, my real parents watching their daughter achieve something they'd once thought impossible. The Davises had stolen my childhood, but not my future. As I walked across the stage, I thought about the girl who'd discovered her name was a lie, who'd escaped through a painted shut window, who'd chosen truth over comfort. She'd been brave in ways I was only now understanding. Lucy Davis was gone, but her courage lived on in Hannah Martinez. My story wasn't unique. Thousands of children disappeared every year, some found, many not. But I'd been lucky. I'd found my way home. Now I could help others do the same. My past, painful as it was, could serve a purpose. That evening, at my graduation party, surrounded by family who'd never stopped searching, I felt complete. Not healed, healing, not perfect, but real. The Davises had written 17 years of my story, but I held the pen now, and I was just getting started. Ha, the Davises house getting sold to a family with twins is like the universe saying, let's try this again, but with actual love this time. And Hannah burning those notebooks in the backyard with her family watching, that's the most healing bonfire I've ever heard of. Way better than roasting marshmallows. This whole story has been one hell of a ride, from fake parents to court papers to finding out your real name, and honestly, Hannah handled it way better than most of us would have. Thanks for reading this story with me. Consider subscribing to see more of this content.